meeting of anybody in particular. Hello to anybody who might be on the call. My name's Tom Morali. I am the moderator for the town of Mendon. Town meeting time, as I like to say. Whenever we have a town meeting, we like to go through the warrant, just kind of give people an idea of what they're going to be voting on, what each of these articles will do, the amounts of money we might be talking about, that sort of thing. Just the sort of nuts and bolts, right? What we're not going to do tonight is allow anybody to advocate for or against any of the articles. We'll save that for town meeting floor. The goal is to basically let everyone know ahead of time, like the mechanics of the articles, to kind of tamp down on questions at town meeting, hopefully be able to focus more on people advocating for or against the articles. So we have some representatives here tonight. We have Elena Brugos from the Select Board. We have Ann Mazar from the Community Preservation and Land Use Committees. We have Carl Hummel from the General Bylaw Review Committee, as well as the Conservation Commission. Jay Beyer, I think you're here in your capacity as your capacity with the Mendon Upton Regional School District, or are you a townsperson, or are you here to replace me?
Questions about the capital project.
Okay, got it. And Dylan Lindholm, assistant town planner or town planner? I'm not sure.
That's Jeremy.
Town planner in waiting, I think is what we're
Okay,
calling.
I'm not sure on your title nowadays. That's all.
Yeah.
Isabella Genova from the Conservation Commission, and Jeremy Stahl, Mendon's town administrator. I'm going to close the shade behind me so there's not like some bright light. If there is a bright light, I'm being abducted, so please help. That's a little better, huh? Okay, so let's go through, starting with Article 1. And let me.
So I've shared my screen, Tom. I've put together this document, and I was waiting for a select board vote from yesterday and waiting to finish out some commentary today. So I will post this tomorrow morning and share it pretty widely. This is the town administrator's warrant report. So I had multiple folks come to me after a special town meeting in the fall and say the warrant accomplishes its legal obligations, but I don't know what I'm looking at. So what I tried to do here is explain what it is. Essentially take this meeting and put it into some commentary. And we go. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to keep sharing the screen, and this is what we can use to walk through the articles tonight, rather than the warrant. This has a little bit more. So I start off with the conduct of town meeting. Registered voters with the clicker, please return your clickers. Votes will be taken electronically. Please return your clickers. And then all of what we expect for town meeting.
Interrupt for a second. Right before you started talking, Carl put his hand up.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
I would like to consider moving Article 30 to the beginning of the meeting, because that would allow us to do electronic voting at town meeting.
So that's a bylaw change, right? So Article 30 is a bylaw change, and it doesn't actually take effect until the AGO's office approves it.
Okay, darn.
This is a thing that's as you well know, that it just codifies and says we can do what we've been doing anyway.
It puts in our bylaws what the town moderator has been doing on using their discretion.
Yeah, my discretion to essentially what we've been doing is everything by secret ballot, which we can do. this just codifies the use of the electronic devices as the default. So as Jeremy said,
Yep, that makes sense. It's not official
Yes.
until sometime
Right.
over the summer.
right. But next time we'll be doing it as Mendon's new official way of doing things. So,
All right, so do you want to get started on Article 1?
sure, yeah. And before we begin, actually, so something I will be doing is what we like to call a consent calendar, which is when we take several of the articles and kind of lump them together with a simple yes or no. It's kind of to move things along, and what we allow people to do is hold for any. We allow people to choose to take them out. People at town meeting, if they want to vote on something separately, there is a process for that. But I think several of the articles, Jeremy and I discussed which ones today. We're going to put on the consent calendar. So I
Yeah,
don't think.
I believe
I don't
there's
think
about
this-
14 on there. Yeah.
What was that?
I said I think there's 14 or 16 articles on here.
Correct. I thought we said 13. But I know number one is not one of those.
Yeah, so I'll navigate back to my report here, and we can walk through it.
Sure.
So number one essentially says we need to have a balanced budget. So if someone proposes spending more money, they need to figure out where we're going to spend it from, and it's kind of the basis of all the financial motions.
Excellent. Pretty simple.
Well, we do it every year, folks. So folks who have been at town meeting, and every town does it every year. So folks who have been at town meeting anywhere should be familiar with it. Article 2, fixing the salaries of elected officials. So this is the first article that's on the consent agenda. 2 through I think 14 are. The only change in any of these is a 3% COLA for the town clerk, consistent with the rest of the professional staff in town government. So again, this is on the consent agenda because it is presumably uncontroversial. Bills of a prior year. Typically, we see these at special town meeting. There was a transposition error on one of the bills, so we had to short pay it because accounting does their job and goes by the letter of the minutes. So this was a bill. It's actually from, I believe, calendar year 22 that hasn't been paid. So yeah, hopefully that's also non-controversial. And on the consent agenda. Article 4 is Chapter 90. So Chapter 90 is the state's program by which they fund local road repair and improvements. There's $200 million in the fund, and it is based upon a little more than 50% based upon road mileage, and then the rest by population and employment. The governor has filed a bond bill for an additional $100 million to be placed in the program, but based solely on road miles. So that really helps communities in the western part of the state, but also helps places like us relative to places like Boston and Newton and whatnot. We have fewer people, fewer jobs, but per square mile, just as many road miles. So that would bring our Chapter 90 funding to $459,000, which is a huge $175,000 increase from the prior year. This is on the consent agenda because accepting money from the state should be a pretty straightforward thing. Article 5, accepting easements. So this is something new as of special town meeting in the fall. Something recommended by town council. This is allowing the select board, something that needs to be voted each fiscal year, and this allows the select board to accept or authorize easements at no cost. If there's any cost associated with it, it needs to come to town meeting, but this is something we approved previously, and so it is on the consent agenda.
That's what I talked about last fall, I believe. I was saying this would be the last time we had to do it at a special town meeting.
That it will be yearly at an annual town meeting. Yep,
Yep.
exactly that. Article 6, 5-year land use program. So this is on display in the town clerk's office. There have been public hearings on it from the Community Preservation Committee, the Land Use Committee. There's an open hearing at Select Board about it, a public hearing at Select Board about it. So I just kind of go through what the pillars of the land use program are. This is also included on the consent agenda. And it comports with Mendon's master plan. Critically. Article 7, so the Community Preservation Act Police Station debt payment. This is also something that happens every year. So this year's CPA portion is $131,400. On the consent agenda, folks should be very familiar with this mechanism. Otherwise, we would have to raise this money outside of Proposition 2.5 because the debt was excluded. So this keeps folks' property taxes down on the consent agenda. And then Article 8, also on the consent agenda, is setting the budget allocation for the Community Preservation Act. So there are MGL requirements for kind of these 10% floors. And then we have 65% as a budgeted reserve, which gives us some flexibility throughout the year, which is allowed, and again, typical and should be familiar to town meeting. Article 9, CPA Affordable Housing Coordinator. This is $15,000 to support affordable housing coordinator role, which was previously done by a non-full-time employee. As the budget that Select Board is recommending to town meeting includes a full-time planner. The full-time planner role includes job duties relative to affordable housing, and this $15,000 would support that portion of the role at like a day a week or something like that.
Just briefly interrupt. We have a hand
Yes.
raised from Carl.
Yep. The motion that what you have listed is the warrant article. Will the motion include the figure of 15,000 that someone says at the meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
And have we decided or chosen who would be that person?
Dylan Lindholm.
Okay. And is that something that people are comfortable talking about and saying it's them?
Yeah, so I will talk at the meeting and say the budget recommends a full-time planner, the identified incumbent. We haven't actually posted a full-time planner job because it hasn't been approved by town
Money's
meetings.
not there.
So I haven't been able to post it. So thank you, Dylan, for trusting me and us in this process. So we'll say I will talk. I actually won't talk in specifics about Dylan. What I'll talk about is in the role and the job description of what the full-time planner is. And that the budget as presented has a planner salary less $15,000, anticipating this CPA subsidy for it.
Yep.
That's a good question, though. Article 10, also on the consent agenda, insurance repayment. Sorry, I will say on Article 9, this is on the consent agenda. It is something that CPA has funded in many years prior, just not typically with a full-time employee. But I think it's still consent agenda worthy. Article 10, insurance repayment. I've talked about this probably at least three public meetings. We have a early retiree who was in a family plan, switched to a individual plan. The town has been paying for an individual plan, but the deduction, and this person has been receiving I'll be gender neutral at the town meeting. This person has been receiving individual plan benefits, but Worcester Retirement has been deducting and remitting to the town family plan premium amounts since February of 22. So when our current HR coordinator found this out in February 25, fixed the glitch, so to speak. But the overpayments to the town equal $18,823.56. So this is money that we collected that we were not due to, that was not due to us, and free cash is a equal amount higher as a result of it. So we owe this individual this amount of money. It's on the consent agenda. Somebody may hold it because it's bizarre, but we certainly owe this money, and it will be a bit ugly if it doesn't happen in this clean way.
How many years?
3. So go ahead.
Would that count as a bill of a prior year?
It's not a vendor. It's not been invoiced. I'm working with accounting. We've been going back and forth a handful of times about how this actually gets remitted to the individual, right? Because this may incur a tax liability for them, but that's kind of up to them to figure out with their own, tax counsel or tax professional.
If it's a bill of a prior year, wouldn't it need 7/8 vote?
So it's not an invoice per se.
Okay.
It's I will get more clarity.
I'd like council to weigh in on this one if possible.
In which case it's not on the consent calendar.
If it can be, I'd love to include it. If it doesn't count as a bill of a prior year, I'd love to include it. But if we have to, I mean, the other option is, I think we've done this before. The consent calendar has to pass by 7/8. Right, and
Okay.
I mean that's the point of the consent calendar is it's just by simple consent. Elena?
Did you say that, sorry, bills of a prior year need 7/8? Was bills of a prior year not in the consent calendar?
We've included it before, just with the expectation that the consent calendar will need 7/8 to pass. I'm just wondering if this does count as a bill of a prior year. That's all.
Okay.
So we currently have a bill of a prior year on
Right.
the consent agenda
Yes.
anyway.
But
So
But that will need 7/8 majority.
Correct. And I mean, the idea of a consent calendar is it's by consent, so that shouldn't be a problem. We just should know if this article in particular, if somebody wants to pull it out, something like that, if it needs to be passed by 7/8.
I mean, I could see why people would ask for a further explanation on this.
Right. I just
Okay.
yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested to know if this does count as a bill of a prior year, because
Why is the town reimbursing them instead of the WRB?
So Worcester Retirement Board remits to the town on a monthly basis. So when someone is a retiree and is an early retiree in this situation and has their contribution of premiums deducted from their retirement benefit. So $100 goes out, but $25 of it is for the premium. Worcester Retirement Board only sends the retiree $75, and then that $25 they send directly to us.
And then we use it to pay the insurance premium.
Right. And then we take that $25, and in this situation, because we pay 75% or 70% of the premium, the $105, we take that and put the 25 with it and send that out the door and pay the premium for the plan.
yeah, generally there's like a big monthly check from the Worcester Regional Retirement Board that lists every retiree and how much each retiree is paying, so that
It doesn't feel like a bill it feels like we're making whole somebody who was overcharged in previous years. So yeah, town council.
Yeah, I'd just like town council to weigh in, because this is such a unique circumstance.
Yeah,
it
and
does-
when we've taken steps to not do again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying anything else. I'm not saying it's any other situation, but it would just
Well-
be, if we pass it by simple majority and somehow somebody says, "Hey, that was invalid," and then we have to come back and do it again with 7/8. I'd like to just take care of it now.
So I'm
Like,
glad
make
I
sure
opened the
it's
can of
corrected.
worms by asking how many years now rather than it coming up on Friday.
Yeah, and if we could get clarification from Karis, that would be awesome.
Certainly will. Yeah, I have a follow-up with her, email drafted for after this meeting, so stuff that comes up. So great.
And this is why we do this exercise, so that we can, iron out these details beforehand. So we're on Friday, next Friday, we're rock solid, right?
Great. Article 11, also on the consent agenda, and similarly long-winded in explanation. So we had a state grant that was overcharged by $65,350. The funding sources for our water study have been, from multiple places, and it was literally the week I started. And as we went to close out it should have been charged to ARPA. And as we went to close out to ARPA, saw that we had $65,350 left over in this water fund. I checked with everyone, said, "Hey, everything's been paid. We don't need this, right?" And everyone's like, "Yep, good. No outstanding invoices." So I closed that out and used it for, just other general fund stuff. And then our town accountant, not long after our warrant was open, said this grant's been overcharged, should have been charged to ARPA. So this is again a situation in which free cash will be higher, not was higher, but will be higher in this exact amount because of moving of this expense. So we need to use free cash to fund this this overcharge grant. And if we don't, this is the critical part that if it gets held, I'll talk about more at length. If we don't do this, then we'll have a deficit in a grant account, and then our free cash will be dinged, so to speak, will be held back by the state in an equal amount. So either we spend the free cash or the state holds back our free cash. We really don't have a choice here.
Perfect.
So hopefully it just goes on the consent agenda without issue, because that can get muddied a little bit. Article 12, snow and ice removal deficit, $93,355.35. It's the only line that municipalities are able to operate in a deficit. We had a lot of snow this year, and we had a lot of snow, like plow, sand, sort of borderline stuff. And our salt budget was in deficit of $95,000. And that's what drove this. I think folks know it snowed a lot, so hopefully that's we can also raise it on next year's levy, but that would reduce our ability to spend on next year's levy. So using free cash, it was my recommended approach. Fire station garage doors. This is on the capital plan. We've recently instituted or recently formalized the capital projects committee. It's in the bylaws as that. So now we have 2 CPCs. But this has been on the radar of the working group. We recently replaced the motors and the openers with operating budget money, but these doors are original to 2001 and are a safety hazard, are inefficient and whatnot. So this is $60,000 from free cash to replace these garage doors. Also on the consent. Yep.
Why do you think that will be not contested?
I have limited experience with Mendon Town Meeting, but we purchased purchased a lot with free cash on the consent agenda.
I can speak to that. I see it as a housekeeping item, and therefore I'm electing to put it on the consent agenda. It's a Mendon Town Meeting voters want to pull it out. They are more than welcome to do so when we're going through the consent agenda.
Yeah, I took kind of a maximalist approach to what I suggested to be on the consent agenda because just one person can say hold and it gets pulled off. So
Right.
it, it doesn't, it's not skirting any process because, if one person feels like it's skirting process, we can go through the whole process on its own. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I'm
no, not at all.
Speaking as the conductor, so to speak. Like the whole point of the consent agenda is to move those items forward that may have less discussion or no discussion, and make sure we have more time to discuss the items that are much more controversial. So if somebody does want to discuss this, and they're more than welcome to pull it out, but I think this is one that we might fall into the category of housekeeping.
I will have, for everyone's edification, I will have kind of a running tally of free cash. So I talk about it. I'm going to do Tom. Tom and I were on the phone earlier today, and I said there's one thing I want to talk about, and I couldn't remember what. I've been asked by a select board member to do, and I think it's a good idea to do kind of a business update. So my anticipation is when we start and say, Article 1, all financial motions, I'm going to have 2 or 3 slides say here's like the state of the town. Here's what we're looking at in fiscal 25 right now, and then here's where our current free cash is. And if everything that's passed on the that's asking for an appropriation from free cash in this meeting, here's where our free cash ends at the end. So folks aren't kind of in the dark. There's a little bit of a running tally. So I'm going to have that. I'm going to have a little chart that says, here's where we start, and then as we pass things, here's where we end. So to kind of spoil the ending, if everything here that asks for a free cash appropriation is passed, we still end up with $122,000 left over in free cash, which is $122,000 more than the town has had in some very recent years at this point in the calendar. Article 14, the police matching grant funds. So the police department is eligible for a handful of state and federal grants, which require local match. This gives them a little bit of flexibility throughout the year to be able to do that. It's something we've been doing for a long time. So I have it on the consent agenda, and it's a very small dollar amount, $3,500. And then we get into the not consent agenda items. So the general fund budget. I have, of course, the general fund budget line by line. I also have do I have it open? A budget which I'll share with Dan and share with all the folks making the motion, which just breaks it down by salary and expense. So we have that flexibility year to year. And we'll have the budget up on the screen. The budget will be part of this book. It's 20 pages right now, so it's going to be quite a few more pages when I post it tomorrow. But just some highlights for folks. Fully funds level service, which is not the same as level funded, right? If contract goes up, we still fund it. Fully funds labor contracts. We add 1 full-time career firefighter. We go from having an IMA with a town planner to doing a full-time planner. We add a grounds foreman in the highway grounds and facilities department. So that means that the Parks and Recreation director is not on a lawnmower for 20 hours a week. And then we're taking some of his hours and some of the Parks director hours and reformatting it to focus on facilities. So we'll have a 15-hour a week public facilities coordinator. The Council on Aging administrative assistant goes from part-time to full-time, which is great. There's so many programming opportunities and so many events done there that we kind of need coverage and need another full-time body down there, over there.
Carl has a question.
Yep, I'm now switching and putting on my Concom chair hat. This commentary does not include the 7% raise for the town clerk because that was in a previous article. However, Isabella, the conservation agent, is also getting a raise that is getting funded from one of the wetlands accounts. Is that something that should get mentioned someplace in this document or during this meeting?
So the town clerk is getting a 3% COLA,
3%. Okay.
just like everybody else. We're free too. So for the edification of folks watching, we're doing a compensation and classification study for every employee within town. The Mass Association of Conservation Agents has done something super similar to what we're trying to do, and we have really hard data for peer communities. After conversations with the incumbent and the select board, it was agreed upon to recommend to town meeting that this individual be given a merit-based increase that gets part of the way to what we anticipate will be the merit and market-based increase at the end of the compensation and classification study. That marginal difference, the difference between what the COLA and the overall year-over-year raises, is being funded through the Wetlands Protection Act account. So fees we take in from developers as part of the Conservation Commission review. So that money is budgeted in the general fund budget. It will not be expended because it will ultimately end up being charged to the Wetlands Protections Act account. It is a de minimis amount on a $24 million budget, so I don't have it in here because it's one individual. I'd be happy to talk about it. And, you know, we've talked about it at public meetings many times before. I didn't put it in here because I thought it may derail some of the conversation.
Yep. Okay.
And because of how the budget was passed in 2025, so the salary line in what's called 171, Department 171 Conservation, included benefit costs. The year over year looks like it goes down, which it's not. We still have a 40-hour-a-week conservation agent, but I feel like it takes a lot of explanation and over $4,000, $4,100 in ways that I want to really highlight some of these other investments and changes in town.
And I believe it's 30 hours, and then she has 10 hours on a different account responsibility. Okay.
All of it, yeah. I mean, all of it's paid from the general fund still, though. But yes, you're right.
Okay.
And then council on 4 hours. So there was 4 hours added to the library technician budget in fiscal 25, and that was kind of spread across some folks to do some coverage and some additional hours, whatever. And then we added 4 more hours of technician, and so they'll be able to hire a 8-hour technician, and that will also that will be covered by. There isn't a vote yet, but it's my anticipation that in fiscal 26 those additional 4 hours will be covered by the library's state funds. Again, it accounts to something like a quarter of their funds that they receive in the year. And then additional funds in building maintenance. So this is where we put in, I don't know, $70,000 or so. So identified work at the senior center, identified work at the Taft Public Library, including retaining walls and whatnot. Some identified work at town hall, and then, yet to be identified work, right? Because stuff happens throughout the year. So part of the 15 additional hours on town facilities, now we put money behind that and say, I love the saying, if you don't schedule time for maintenance, your equipment will schedule it for you. So, we need to make sure we get stay on top of this sort of thing. So that's a general fund budget, $24.4 million. I imagine we'll talk about it quite a bit more than I'm talking about now. But I have spent so much time in it that I'm more than happy to convince people of it. The water budget, $220,000. Essentially user fees, really straightforward. If it wasn't a budget item, I'd also have it on the consent agenda. It's just the 3 subsystems we have in town. Revolving fund caps. So there is a pending legislation right now that would say if you don't change anything, you don't have to vote on it, but that's not yet enacted. The Municipal Empowerment Act. So these are revolving funds, and what revolving funds mean is that money they take in, they kind of keep it separate from the general fund, and they're for very specific fee-based, revenue-based programs. Chief among them is parks, as you can see here. So a $250,000 spending cap. So very critically, this is not a cap on how much they can take in. This is not a cap on what their fund balance is. This is a cap on how much they can spend each year. So the only change this year is parks. Everybody else is the same as was passed last year. So parks, a vast majority of that is salaries for the Kids and Us summer program. So as the program expands, as wages go up, the cap needs to go up. What's important to note, I talk about general bylaws, chapter 32 here, is that if that revolving fund wants to spend more than $10,000 on any individual thing, some sort of site improvement or whatnot, they need to come to the select board or town meeting to get approval. So it's not carte blanche to spend $250,000. Big expenditures still need to fit within the capital approach of the town. That should say Board of Health. I'll fix that before we post it. Solid waste and recycling budget. I talked about this at special town meeting. It was created. The enterprise fund was created at annual town meeting in 2024. The funds were duly appropriated in both the general fund and enterprise fund. And to start fiscal 25, the program existed in the general fund. So rather than do $1 million accounting paper transactions, we're just keeping it there for fiscal 25. And then in fiscal 26, we'll start clean. So if you actually look at year over year on the budget stuff, there's $600,000 in Department 430 that was there in 25. It is not going to be there in 26. And that's all this recycling and solid waste. So I think town meeting is very familiar with this, and we'll have the budget attached as well. It's just a 5-line budget, similar to water. It's user fee based. 19 and 20 are super similar articles. The Board of Assessors, Kevin Rudden talked about this at Finance Committee last week. So Article 20 is the cyclical inspection account. Every 5 years, we need to go out and really inspect everything. Article 19 is the valuation account. In between those 5 years, we need to keep up on stuff. So we raise this on the levy. This is not an appropriation from free cash, but we create a special article fund for it because it's a little bit lumpy and we don't always spend it, especially 20. 19 we may or may not spend within 1 year, but 20 with cyclical inspection account we only do every 5 years. But we don't want to come to the town and say we need $50,000 every 5 years. We want to say we need $10,000 every year, and it just kind of smooths the expense. These are things that town meeting is used to every year. So now we're back to consent agenda items, and 19 and 20 are on the consent agenda. And the reason they're not lumped with the other ones at the start of the meeting is, they are budgetary based. They are raised on the levy in fiscal 26. So I wanted to put them with the budget items. All right, Jay, you're up. Sorry, Carl's got his hand up.
I will be staying with this meeting, but Isabella needs to leave in about 5-10 minutes to start working on the Conservation Commission meeting. Could we cover Article 29 conservation so she can switch over?
Thank you, Carl. Sorry, Jay.
Stealing your thunder.
All right, so wetlands protection bylaw. So this is kind of tightening up and making sure and having the bylaw comport with the Mass Association of Conservation Commission's model bylaw. So Isabella, do you want to talk a little bit more, because I'm very soon to be out of my depth.
Hi, sorry, I heard my name. I wasn't quite listeling.
I said I have no idea what I'm talking about, and can you come in and talk about the wetlands protection bylaw?
Yeah, I propose to the commission that we update the bylaw, kind of working with it. There's been a few times where there's some holes in the language, and so this follows more closely the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions which is a nonprofit group that works for conservation commissions. It follows their model bylaw and is a lot closer to surrounding towns. The important thing to note is there are no jurisdictional changes. We're not assuming any more regulated resource areas or buffer zones. This is really language to help ensure the commission is able to implement their bylaw, and engineers and professionals and property owners are all able to understand it the same way.
Excellent. Thank you. And this report that I'm posting tomorrow will have the red line version of the bylaw attached to it. The town clerk has a red line version of the bylaw. So any folks who are interested in what the actual word by word changes are will have access to that.
Thank you.
Back up to MURSD. So we've got three MURSD debt authorizations. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, town meeting will be voting to, as per the regional agreement, to authorize the Mendon Regional School District to borrow debt. The obligor, the borrower, will be the regional school district. It will not be the town. And then the motion will be contingent on passing of a debt exclusion. So our town meetings May 2nd and municipal elections are May 13th or whatever that Tuesday is. And voters will have to approve a debt exclusion for this, which means we exempt it from Proposition 2.5. For all three. So by all three, I mean we have a roof project, we have a facilities project, and we have a athletic and grounds project. Jay has given this presentation a number of times. The article language and the motion language come from bond council and school council and town council, and it's been rehashed a million times. In my report here, the commentary and all of this detail comes largely from MURSD's webpage on their capital projects. And I went back and forth with the school district before posting any, or before, finalizing any of this. So this is, and these numbers here come from the calculator that's on the school's website. And after a inquiry to its accuracy, we've since gone through it and drilled down again, and folks are free to use and should be confident in what their tax calculator on the website says. I used it for $100,000 of home value. I feel like that's something that folks can key off of and say, well, my home is worth however many hundreds of thousands, so we'll multiply by that. So Jay, if you want to give the Reader's Digest version of what we're talking about for these three articles, I'll navigate through them with you.
Okay, so this shouldn't be the 47 slide 3-hour presentation.
It'll be next Friday.
We can avoid it. All right, first it's 3 projects. The first one is replacing the roof at Nipmuc High School. It's through the MSBA program. We're getting 52.26% reimbursement on what they consider reimbursable, which is really just the roof. But at the same time, we need to replace the HVAC equipment that sits on the roof that's 30 years old and needs to be upgraded to more modern equipment. So that's the first project. There's not a lot else I really need to add, I don't think. I think it's pretty much, it's identical to what the town approved last year for BVT, same type of project. We've got a roof that's 30 years old. It's got leaks everywhere. We need to replace it. So that would be
my overwhelming opinion is when you need a roof, you need a roof. I know this is not an advocacy thing, but I hope folks realize that.
Yeah. All right. The second project proposed is a variety of facility projects. There's you've got them all listed here, but the gist of it is systems that sort of operate the brains of the school that again are outdated and old. We've been trying to keep them running for many years now, but parts are no longer available for most of them. So they have to do with the building management systems. Those are the computer systems that basically control the HVAC equipment, We want to get a key card door entry system put in so that we have better security in the buildings. The paging systems in the schools are barely functioning and again are 25, 30 years old. The clocks, all that kind of stuff. So those are happening at all 4 schools. And we're looking at replacing flooring in Misco and Nipmuc. Again, some of the carpeting in some of the rooms is 30 years old and it's ripped and people are tripping over them. We have been replacing rooms periodically when we have to, but it's fairly expensive. The data cabling is outdated. We need to upgrade that. A lot of this stuff was put in when the school was built, and it's hard to believe that the school is 30 years old, but it is. At the elementary schools, we're looking to replace some of the curbs and sidewalks that have crumbled apart. Again, we're looking to put a generator in at Misco Hill. We don't have one. We'd like it to be an emergency shelter for the town as well. But the problem we have there is when the power goes out, we can't really keep kids in school because you have no water and you have no bathrooms. We have an electrical system at Misco that was put in 1958. It has oil-filled transformers in the room there. We're working with National Grid to get those replaced, but the switch that turns everything on and off is also from 1958. And we will never switch it off as long as it's in place because we're pretty convinced that if we turn it off, it's never going back on again. The other big issue at Misco is bathrooms. The bathrooms were renovated in 1997 with the concept that it was going to be a kindergarten through grade 5 school, but it is now a 5 through 8 building. So all of the fixtures, the toilets and all that stuff are really low to the ground. The kids are much bigger. So we need to do some work there. And again, some flooring. And then we got a bunch of lockers down in the basement area that are just rusted out that we look to replace. So those are the Misco projects. We're looking to do some caulking on windows at the elementary schools and the curbs and sidewalks. So that's the brief summary of all the facility projects. The third piece is fields and grounds. And this involves, first of all, redoing the fields at Misco Hill, which are hard as a rock and compacted. We do have a grant to put in some irrigation, but probably not enough to cover the whole area. But that side field where the baseball, softball, and there's like a practice field in the middle needs to really be regraded and, you know, the soil loosened up and reseeded. And we need to do something to make that a more playable field. The issue there is overuse. Those fields are in use every single day from pretty much August through December, and then starting again in March all the way through the summer. Pretty much every night there's somebody on those fields. At the high school, same issue with many of the fields that are grass fields, but another piece of this is redoing the football soccer field that's right on Pleasant Street, kind of angling it differently, getting a track on there. We don't have a track in our district, but we have a fairly good track team that has to go somewhere else for any of their meets. It does involve putting a turf surface on that field, putting lights on that field, building a concession stand and bathrooms. So making it more of an athletic facility that can be used for a lot of variety of things. And we hope to, be able to make that available to the community as well. But the other fields throughout the rest of the area there, when they put the wells in for these fields, they were 12-foot bedrock wells, which don't really work when it doesn't rain. So we're looking to put in better wells, better irrigation. Again, the irrigation is 30 years old, and reorient the softball field so that it's a regulation size field, do some adjustment on the baseball field. So they're all just upgrades to the fields that just need to get done that haven't been done. And again, these fields are used constantly, so we need to do something to keep them up. That's the Reader's Digest version.
That was great. Thank you, Jay. And part of that fields discussion goes into Article 24, which is right next. So CPA funds can be used for a subset of Article 23's borrowing costs. So Mendon CPC and Upton CPC are meeting on Monday, the 28th, to say, so of the $10 million project, or rounding, what of that is eligible for CPC funding, and then to say how much is CPC ready, willing, and able to fund of debt service on a year-to-year basis. So Anne, can you kind of talk about where you think CPC is on this and your approach? I think you're kind of keyed towards what, the support of what the regular surcharge is and not the matching. So can you just talk a little bit about CPC's position on this?
Well, right now we have the police debt, and that will be done in like 7 years, I believe. And the committee talked about it, and we felt comfortable in the, supporting it in the $100,000 range. But we want to kind of talk to Upton to see what they're thinking. And I mean, each year we receive around $600,000, and that, increases each year. So we feel that we can handle this and still, be open for other projects.
And just to remind folks, just like the police debt, this would be a vote that needs to happen each year at town meeting to say, let's use CPC funds or CPA funds to fund this part of debt service, which is otherwise excluded from Proposition 2.5. So it's my anticipation, and Jay, correct me if I'm way off base here, but it's my anticipation that in fiscal 26, debt service related to athletic fields will be minimal at most.
Yeah, I believe that debt service on any of these 3 projects, but the fields, well, we're hoping if it's approved, we potentially could start work on the fields in, say, November after the season is over. But I doubt there's going to be a lot that gets done in this fiscal year. Some of that will be determined in the fall and would come to a fall special town meeting, but I don't think there's going to be a lot.
Right. And even if you borrowed, we'd only have an interest payment in fiscal 26.
Correct. It would be minimal cost, if anything.
Yeah. So part of what the town has said, or select board has recommended town meeting to send aside for school assessment includes a spacer, a buffer, anticipating that fiscal 27 is going to be considerably higher based upon a number of factors that the school department covered with select board. But there are available resources within the fiscal 26 budget to absorb kind of small blips in terms of interest only payments on debt. But I invite folks to attend, listen in. I think it will be largely, if not wholly, remote on the 28th. But I invite folks to listen to the CPC joint meeting on the 28th.
Carl has a question.
Yes. Will money raised by coming out of the Mendon CPC be used for fields outside of the town of Mendon?
Yes. So there is a complicated. I don't envy Jay.
I'm sure someone will ask on Friday.
So
You want me to go through how it works?
yeah, go ahead. I was going to do a worse job of it than you.
It is relatively complicated. So the way debt service works when the school district borrows is adjusted every year annually based on each town's enrollment in the facility where the debt applies, if that makes sense. So the Misco Field stuff, it's going to be the enrollment in Misco Hill School between Mendon and Upton. That's the percentage that gets split as far as the assessment. The fields at Nipmuc, same thing. It's the enrollment at Nipmuc split between the towns. It'll be the same for Clough and Memorial as well. And we will probably come up with a relatively simple formula that we can apply so that we don't have to kill ourselves every year. But yes, CPC, if it contributes money, it would only be paying the debt being assessed to the town of Mendon. But part of that debt being assessed may involve stuff that was done in the town of Upton.
Is there reciprocity? Would the Upton CPC money be paying for things at the middle school?
Well, so if the Upton CPC also offsets debt service on an annual basis, it would be paying for whatever debt they're being assessed for, say, the field use, and that would involve Misco and Nipmuc. Now, the project at Nipmuc is a lot more expensive than the project at Misco. But the fields are available to both towns. I mean, it's not like we're going to say, Mendon, you can't use any of the fields at the high school, because they currently do quite considerably, just like the Upton groups used the Mendon fields. Because all of the youth groups are joined together now. It's not like when my kids were little and Mendon had its own group and Upton had its own group. They're all in the same group now.
Perfect.
Good question, Carl. All right, so ARMA, so age restricted mixed use overlay district. So this currently exists on parcels in town. The town meeting has approved before, and this would this article asks to add 3 North Ave and 6 Milford Street, so Taft Orchard area, to the overlay district. It does not prescribe a particular type of development, and it does not preclude future municipal development. What it does is it allows the possibility of a future particular type of development, which town meeting has approved at other parcels previously. So Dylan, can you talk about this better than me?
I mean, that was everything. I unfortunately noticed a typo. I
About the parcels?
Yeah. I have in chat. So the 3 North Ave parcel number is incorrect. So we might have to change that on the floor if it's already in
So
the warrant.
the problem is the warrant article has the parcels listed.
Mm-hmm. So the address is correct, but the parcel number is wrong. So it is not the parcel number of that.
I would say that since it says 3 North Ave and 6 Milford Street, I'm fine with an amendment to correct the parcel number, since it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's within the scope of the article because it says the address.
Especially because, yeah, it was the same parcel number on both, so clearly it wasn't like some other parcel.
Yeah,
It was just
right.
repeated.
I'll accept.
And as I understand it, the point of a warrant is to warn folks about, topics of discussion. So here we say the motion will not have the incorrect parcel number. The motion will have the correct parcel number.
Right.
But I think the warrant sufficiently warns residents that it is 3 North Ave that is under consideration.
Yeah. I agree.
And we have a presentation as well for a town meeting. Not sure exactly who's doing it yet, but someone will.
Anne has her hand raised, and Carl has his.
That 6 Milford Avenue, was it 6 Milford Street?
Yep.
That's part of the conservation restriction. So I don't know, there's an easement in the conservation restriction, but I don't know that it should be part of the ARMA.
Yeah, that's what I was given by select board. I don't know why.
We should probably just look at the conservation restriction.
Sure.
That's all.
My turn.
And Carl?
Yep. Last fall at our walkthrough meeting, there was a similar typo in the warrant language, and Kevin Rudden made a big deal about it. In order to prevent a similar floor fight, it might be safer if the motion is made exactly as stated in the warrant, and then there is immediately following a friendly amendment to change to the new parcel number.
Well, so the motion the motion is fine because it has to be within the scope of the article, and the questions of scope are up to the moderator. And
okay,
I am viewing this as it clearly states which addresses are going to be impacted. So that is within the scope as far as I'm concerned.
I've raised the risk and you're accepting it.
I will accept the risk. All right.
All right, thank you both. Let me navigate back. Also Dylan, so flood hazard overlay district. So amending the zoning bylaws, Article 5, Section 5.03. The principal thrust behind this, as I understand, is to comport with federal MEMA, FEMA regulations relative to NFIP eligibility. So where applicable, so that's why I wanted to write this here. This doesn't apply to everybody. If you're not in the flood district, if you're not in the hazard overlay district, because not everybody's NFIP eligible. So Dylan, can you?
It does
elaborate?
affect everyone in the community because anyone can have flood insurance even if they're not in the floodplain.
Okay,
But
I will take that off.
yeah, everyone is, but it just changes regulations for people who want to build structures in the floodplain, but it benefits everybody in the community. And I have like less than a minute little spiel I can give at the town meeting that just says basically that, but you know, gives people that understanding.
All right, thank you. I will keep my mouth shut on that one. BVT stabilization fund. So BVT brought this to us. If folks are interested, I encourage them to watch the recording of last Tuesday's finance committee meeting where BVT came and presented to FinCom, and we discussed this for nearly 40 minutes. It seeks to create an additional fund which they can sock money into. It does not seek an additional appropriation this fiscal year. Select board is not favorable, has a not favorable recommendation. Finance committee voted 6-1 as a favorable recommendation. To editorialize a bit, I am vehemently opposed, and to both kind of.
We can talk about that at town meeting. We can talk about no editorializing here. We're just talking about the
So this creates an additional fund. So there's no appropriation. It creates an additional fund to which BVT can save excess revenues, which is what we have here.
Thank you.
Article 28. Fire department SCABA. So SCABA is self-contained breathing apparatus. This is something that needs to be replaced on a regular basis. And rather than be hit with a huge $250,000 bill 5 years from now, this is the first year of kind of setting aside $50,000. So there's the possibility, expectation, reality that $250,000 purchase price may become $300,000 5 years from now. So $50,000 a year may become $60,000 a year by the time we end this. But this is saving money today for a future known expense because of service life. I see Carl's hand up, so before I move on.
How many units are going to be getting bought and replaced? 1, 2, 5, many?
So we have 7 full-time career firefighters right now. We have an additional 8th added in the budget here. And there are, I believe, every career firefighter, or sorry, every on-call firefighter has their own breathing apparatus, but not their own tank associated with it. So we'll have the fire chief there to talk about it specifically. So I don't quite know the count because we're talking about the cylinders as well as the face piece, which is unique to each individual person.
I think that will be information that people at town meeting will want to know.
And I don't have this. I think it's a good point. And I don't have this on the consent agenda, even though it is an appropriation from free cash, because it is unlike other appropriations from free cash. It is saying this is a slice of a future piece. So it would be my anticipation that the annual town meeting for fiscal 26, we could put this on the consent agenda. We could say, we did this last year, we're saving away, like you all understand this, right? But I carved it out to try to explain that piecemeal approach. Article 29 we covered earlier. Town meeting voting bylaw. So this is something that General Bylaws Review Committee Vice Chairman Carl Homo brought up earlier. This is codifying something that town meeting has been doing. So within this report here, we have the changes to the bylaw highlighted. This says we town moderator can use electronic voting to determine consensus. We have 2 members of the committee here. If there's anything else you want to add to this.
It's housekeeping, more or less. We're codifying something we've already been doing, and something that, as the current bylaw allows for secret ballot, that we're just basically confirming that this is how we conduct town meeting.
More specifically, it is changing the default.
Correct.
10 years ago, when I first moved to Mendon, you could see what your neighbors were voting on and who was voting against. This is now making the default to be a secret ballot. And there are some people in the community who think that's a good idea, some people who think that it is not. But it is something that it is helpful if the town as a whole is able to consider this particular method of voting.
And also, to be clear, if the town meeting ever wanted for a specific town meeting to vote by another means, you're more than welcome to vote to do so.
Right. Just 7 folks can say.
Correct.
Raise their hand. Great. And this is a great illustration of something we're talking about later, where it says he shall. So we'll get to that.
That's to be in line. Is it to be in line with the current?
Yeah, certainly. No, that's definitely the way we should present it, right? None of the bylaw changes have been approved by town meeting, let alone AGO. So Article 31, town election date bylaw. Special town meeting in the fall changed the tethering to Fridays for annual town meeting. And as a result, Section 2 of Chapter 2 needed updating to comport with that. So this sets town meeting to be the 3rd Tuesday in May, instead of the Tuesday occurring 11 days after the first Friday. I didn't put any of these on the consent agenda because I thought bylaw changes on the consent agenda would seem like we were underhanded in one way or another. So even though it's straightforward and I don't anticipate too much discussion, I thought it was important to not have this as a consent agenda. Article 32, the General Bylaw Review Committee came with some suggestions to changing the restrictions on employment for elected officials after they exit elected office. And both the General Bylaw Review Committee and the Select Board think this warrants more discussion. So the Select Board recommendation is to pass over this article. I think there's a lot more the committee, select board, the community have some more input on this. So my anticipation is that we would pass over this as town meeting as well. And then lastly, gender neutral bylaw language. So to see if the town will vote to amend the bylaws to use general neutral language throughout. So like I pointed out before, the moderator says he, and that's endemic throughout the entire document. Finance Committee had a question about the financial impact of this. So when we, as a town, changed from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, there was a number of things. There was a cost associated with that. Things need to be reprinted and whatnot. It's not my anticipation after a cursory review that this has any material cost to it. The bylaws and its pronoun reference, there's not a lot of physical material to it. So my anticipation is that it is cost neutral, but if not, I'll report back to Finance Committee and ask for an appropriation to change anything.
I mean, we're not, the title for Select Board's been changed. That's all been printed. This is just, the bylaws just having gender neutral language so that, it doesn't always refer to he.
Right.
There is a point that I wanted to raise about a discussion I might have at the beginning of the discussion of Article 30, after the wetlands protection one. It would be to give an introduction to why the General Bylaws Review Committee was created, and saying this is an example of the kind of cleanup that we have done in the past 6 months and what we expect to be doing moving forward for the next couple of years. And that it is an opportunity for the citizens of Mendon to participate in bylaws discussions outside of select board meetings. And that we would be making recommendations to the select board, and that's why you see the articles being presented by the select board. But it's
I think that's good.
It's a neutral discussion forum that will not take up time from the other meetings.
I think that's good context, right? Why do we have bylaw review committee, or why do we have general bylaw changes here? I will also say we're planning to have some sort of advertisement about committee vacancies at the beginning of the meeting and throughout the meeting. So I believe you all still have one vacancy on your committee. So feel free to shamelessly self-promote and say
we have someone who's indicated interest that is going to come to the next meeting we have.
Oh, good. That's right.
But-
You remember Katie sent me that. So just generally, we're going to try to recruit some volunteers for some other system committees.
And I will be short, since it's coming after probably an hour of capital campaign discussion.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the warrant.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna stop sharing. That's all I've got.
Well, thank you all for coming. Any other additional questions or context? No.
I will.
All right.
Once this recording gets posted, I'll share it on the town Facebook and in the Facebook groups and stuff, so folks can walk through this. And the report that I scrolled through tonight, I will finalize tomorrow with all the bylaw changes and budgets and whatnot through it, and post that for folks to be able to look at. And that will be available online. We'll have some QR codes for folks to scan and look at, and we'll have a handful of truncated printed copies as well.
Elena?
Yeah, so I just had, I guess, a logistics question, which maybe I can run through with Jeremy separately. But I think that, Jeremy, you were talking about doing a financial overview at the beginning. And I guess I was wondering where in the sequence that was going to be. So before the first motion, or as discussion for one of the motions, or one of the articles.
Go ahead.
I was thinking it would be presented as discussion.
Okay.
I think it's germane to be discussion on Article 1. So to say
for the budget.
At that point. So yeah, either or. Tom and I can talk, but it's like 3 slides. It will be
right.
5 to 6 minutes. It'll be short.
I just ask as the likely person to do the first motion, so just knowing sort of what the expected sequence is. So I'll check in with both of you at the beginning of that, so that
Good
so
question.
there isn't that sort of awkward, like me waiting for you to go and you waiting for me to go.
Right. It always takes us a minute to get into the groove.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, remember to return your clickers, everyone.
Clickers. I won't count this though. Usually I have to see it at least 3 times.
On the last 4 GBRC motions, will someone from the select board be making it, or do you want me to make it?
Since it's sponsored by the select board, I would think that somebody from the select board would be making it.
Okay.
Is my thought. And you would be providing discussion, Carl.
Okay, so they would make the motion, and then I'd stand at the mic like Anne usually does, and I would be the first person speaking.
Correct. Yeah. You'd be doing the discussion on behalf of the select board.
Okay.
And I guess, similar question. So, for select board motions where Jeremy is providing the discussion. So I think maybe we can check in about who's speaking when, and if So I think, and I think Jeremy is, I guess, so usually the select board does not like identify with each motion, but like with Jeremy need to sort of, what will be the process for calling on Jeremy?
The process would be motion, then second, then discussion, and then, you know, the designated representative of whichever sponsoring board would get up to provide discussion. And I mean, you know, that I'm fine with them introducing themselves and saying simply, you know, I'm here to present this on behalf of the select board, or
Okay.
I'm not going to be too strict about, you know, because we've already voted them to be present in the meeting as non-voters. So they're as far as I'm concerned, they're welcome to speak.
Okay.
Identifying themselves as speaking on behalf of the sponsoring board is fine with me.
Okay.
And I can provide you with a cheat sheet that says, you know, select board sponsor, immediately recognize Jeremy, immediately recognize Jay, immediately recognize Carl, or whatever it is, right? Like that. You make the motion, right? I can't make a motion, and but who is the person who contextualizes and introduces the discussion?
Right. You got
Okay.
it.
Okay, great.
Just want to make sure the choreography is all seamless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it definitely won't be. But
It's like-
we're trying.
Then a rival river dance, you know.
Well, actually, like similarly, I know in past years the FinCom chair has read like a lot of the budget issues. So like I don't know like what the plan is this year.
So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's between that's up to the. So the budget's being presented by the select board. We always check in with the FinCom.
Because that's in the bylaws.
Yeah, because they have to weigh in, and they're, you know, they're kind of like giving their view on it. As far as who's reading it, I mean, I think it's, since the article is sponsored by the select board's determining who is behind discussion.
Maybe, I mean, Jeremy, were you envisioning you would do that? Or maybe we could check in with Mike Krager. I don't know. I'm just thinking like tradition. It's I don't, at least in my memory, I don't know, like it's often the FinCom chair reading the budget.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up now. So as I understand it, and I think is a great tool for the town, is that town meeting votes salaries and expenses rather than individual line items for the budget. So what I've created, and I'm not sure how this was done in the past, but what I've created is each individual fund. So I actually haven't watched an annual town meeting proceeding for the town of Mendon, but as I understand it, each department gets voted its salaries and expenses. So rather than going through the 600 lines that are the budget, or it's 800 lines or whatever they are, it's just 2 lines per department.
I think that's sort of effectively, I mean, sorry, now that I see how many, yeah, it's usually, I think, maybe a similar length, although I think, not sure specifically what they're reading from. My impression was that it was from the sort of spreadsheet type presentation, but the sort of bottom line for each department.
Yeah, so there's of course that that I have as that will be on just trying to make sure I share the right book, that will be shared with Dan to make sure we have it up on the screen. Sorry, I'm installing as I share the right window. So I have, you know, this level of detail that will be shared with folks. But what we kind of don't want is, you know, all of these lines, 116 to 121, vote each of those lines.
I think generally, historically, people don't read those. So just
Well,
Just the-
I did.
Oh, you did?
They used to.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
As a motion, Carl, not just for pleasure.
Well, no, there have been times when people would go in and say, I think that the Mendon Conservation Commission should be spending this much on training or on, especially on beavers, and not that much. So there have been individual itemizations.
Yes,
So
but
but I'm perfectly okay now that we're moving into the 21st century that we stick with the high level expenses and salaries and not drill down that deep. We have professional staff, and we can let them do the groundwork for us.
And it avoids, 2 or 3 more special town meetings.
Right. So yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, that's, if the select board and the FinCom want to talk about it beforehand, the FinCom
We
chair
will,
want to talk about it beforehand. I mean,
okay.
But like the sponsoring board is the select board, so it's with every other article, the sponsoring board is responsible for providing the discussion.
Okay. All right.
292 has a typo.
It
Anna
does.
McCall. Yes.
Anna McCall. All right. Do we have anything else?
I mean, I in the other meetings, I don't think we divided it even by salary and expense. It was more just the bottom line that was read, the total.
I can state that dividing it between salary and expense is a pretty common thing. And like the idea being that, if non-salary expenses are fungible, making them fungible so that if a department has expenses broken down by type, like postage and is one line item, and then let's say like office supplies is another. That way they both fall into the expenses line item. So if they have some money left in like the postage expenses, they can use them to pay for the office supplies if they run low. Whereas, salaries, you don't want them to take from the salary line item to fund their office supplies. That's purely, or vice versa. You need to go in front of the select board and FinCom to get a transfer. So that's a common thing, dividing them out.
Okay. All right.
I see
All right,
Dylan
that's all.
typing.
That's all I had.
Dylan's typing something. Oh, Dylan's good. Okay.
No, I'm emailing. Sorry.
No, that's
things at once.
fine. That's fine. That is fine. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap this meeting up. Hopes we don't start to rival how long the actual town meeting will be. Something tells me we're not, but
Depends whether we get the 15-minute, half hour, or 1 hour capital campaign slideshow.
15 minutes, what we're shooting for.
Okay.
We'll find out then. But thank you all for coming. Mendon residents, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or any of the people here tonight. Happy to provide some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
See you
Thanks.
next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.